On New Year's Day, Aston Villa went to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and won brilliantly 2-0. A week later, we were losing to League Two promotion hopefuls Stevenage and getting knocked out of the FA Cup thanks to two late goals 2 minutes apart. Half the fan base saying, we've got a good enough squad, just needs better coaching. The other half saying the squad is rubbish, they need to be binned. Same week, rumors that Harry Maguire were coming to Aston Villa, rubbished by Fabrizio Romano. In the meantime, half the fan base saying, we must have Harry Maguire. What a get that would be. The other half saying, why would we take a guy who can't even get into United's first team? Welcome to life at Aston Villa Football Club, where the only thing that is predictable is inconsistency. Let's review. Aston Villa 1, Stevenage 2. All right, let's just get into it. The Holy Trinity show, the three key issues or moments that defined Aston Villa 1, Stevenage 2. I can't even believe I'm saying it. It's just so utterly surreal. Starting with the key statistics, and it was not a good outing for Leon Bailey. If the idea was to play him in this game to give him confidence, I think that might have actually backfired. Villa dominated in all categories. They should have had more of those attempted shots hit the target, but look at the accurate passing, look at the possession. And when Leon Bailey is very good, he's winning ground duels. He's taking people on and beating them. He didn't in this game. And Villa is out of the FA Cup at the third round stage again. I want to start by taking a very wide-angled lens view of this because, you know, there were 31 games played in round 3, only Forest Green Rovers and Blues still to come. Only 11 times out of 31 games did the home team win. Only 1 out of 3 of the round 3 games was won by the home team. That's just weird to me. You'd think you'd want to play on your home patch. You have the home support. You don't have to travel. And yet it feels like in this competition, it's an advantage to be drawn as the away side. Hey, no pressure. We sell out our away allotment because it's a great fun away day. Meanwhile, the home crowd, sometimes not as bumper and boisterous as during a league fixture. Maybe it's better to be drawn away from home. At least the results would bear that out based on this round. I get it. If you're the Premier League side and you played a midweek game against Wolves like Villa did on Wednesday, you're going to rotate the squad for a home FA Cup tie against Stevenage on the following Sunday. That's the way it is. Okay, and there were 3 starters from the Wolves game that also started in the Stevenage game. And then you add some of the late subs that came on the Wednesday. Danny Ings, Phil Coutinho, Ludwig Augustinsson. Okay, but the bottom line is that team that faced Stevenage had never, ever played together. Ever in history. Full stop. They've never played together. And take these 5 players, okay? Morgan Sanson, Jan Benderak, Callum Chambers, Leander Dendoncker, and even Matt Cash, who had some injury issues. Put all those 5 players together and count up their total meaningful minutes inside the last month. You won't even get an hour out of that group. That's shocking. That is not a recipe for success. So you have a team of players low on minutes. They've never played together collectively as a unit. And now you're up against a side that has lost once in 14 games, 2 wins on the spin, second place in League Two with a game in hand on Leyton Orient. They're in form. They are a unit and they have nothing to lose. So now you're the home Premier League side that's expected to conjure up some kind of a magical performance with a squad full of inconsistent, at best, 6 out of 10 players. This is, and always has been, a recipe for trouble. I understand, we all need to understand, the Premier League is absolutely the priority. Get safety first. Make sure you get a piece of that TV money, then move up the table as far as you can to get some prize money and maybe even squeak into those golden ticket European places. That is the priority, especially when you're a squad that's a bit thin, which Villa is, exacerbated by the McGinn and Ramsey injury situations of late. So we can't be surprised when this happens to us anymore because it's been happening to us since 2015. Oh my God, wasn't that Remy Gard's year? And now that record feeds on itself. Even League Two sides are getting drawn against Aston Villa and going, well, you know what, actually? We're going to face a team that's never, ever played together. Meanwhile, we've all played together. This is our team. We have continuity. Let's go for it. And sure enough, it happened again. We shouldn't be shocked by this anymore. We've seen this movie over and over since 2015. It's like Groundhog Day, frankly. Wasn't it Stoke that came to Villa Park and rolled us over a couple of years ago? Aston Villa is a fragile football club. You don't go through 3 managers in just over a year if you're on solid footing. And the problem with all that turmoil is that your transfer policies go out the window and managers bring in their favorite players. Well, Unai Emery wants Alex Moreno now. I don't know if he's coached him in the past, but he's from La Liga, so he would have seen him. Gerrard wanted Coutinho, Dean Smith wanted Ollie Watkins and Matt Cash and Ezri Konsa. We've got to button up our transfer policy and go for the highest quality we can. We need to improve players 1 to 11, but we also need to significantly improve players 12 to 20. There's a saying that the Premier League table don't lie, and I agree with that. But you know what's happening? The cup competitions are starting to expose who has the best and worst squads, which is why Manchester City is going to be in the final probably of both competitions and why we can't get out of the third round. And we're not the only ones who got exposed either. Just ask Newcastle United, who suddenly realized, you know, maybe our players 12 to 20 aren't as good as we thought they were. Big issue number 3, passive non-aggressive. Unai Emery laid out the game plan in the pre-match press conference. I'm going to select a side that is going to control the game. Well, you saw the stats. Aston Villa absolutely controlled the game, even though Stevenage had 2 of the best chances in the first half, brushing the crossbar, and VAR had to deny them of a goal through offside. Finally, Morgan Sanson scored after Villa huffed and puffed. They couldn't go over, they couldn't go around, they couldn't go through, but they finally got themselves a goal with all that possession, and they couldn't build on it. They couldn't take advantage of some back and forth play at the beginning of the second half. They couldn't counter when Stevenage finally had to press forward. And ask Spain how possession without purpose and penetration works out in the most recent World Cup when they came up against a group of street fighters in Morocco. And I'm not painting Unai Emery with one broad stroked brush of Spanish football here because he's Basque and they're wired differently there. But the point is, there was way too much possession without purpose or penetration, trying to move them side to side, tire them out. At some point, you've got to challenge and get over top or around or through some way. Somebody's got to make a run, draw a foul, whatever it takes. That did not happen. And even stranger was when Stevenage finally came out of their shell and said, well, we got to go now and press. After not pressing for the better part of 80 minutes, when it finally did happen, it was as if Aston Villa was completely ill-prepared for the press. Of the many issues this football club needs to address going forward, it is our inability to play a team that plays a low block, that sits in. And in a 10-team relegation battle, which we're facing in the Premier League this year, we're going to face it again, especially if we fall behind in a game. And how many times did you see Phil Coutinho sky a shot because there was no ball to play in behind him? Part of that problem was Danny Ings. And I said it after the Wolves game. Horses for courses. When a game is back and forth and there's space in behind, Danny Ings gets chances. In a game like this, 5 defenders, 10 behind the ball. Fair play to Stevenage. They were well drilled, they were disciplined, and they kept their shape for the majority of the match, keeping Villa to just 1 goal allowed. But if you can't go through and you can't go over, can you go around? And between Matt Cash, Leon Bailey, and Augustinsson, we barely ever threatened their fullbacks. We couldn't get around the corner and maybe force or draw a foul or create some kind of chaos from the byline. That just simply didn't happen. And this is why the Alex Moreno signing to me, makes an awful lot of sense. Big moment. Number 2. Leanders Laps. This could have been the number 1 because it completely changed the game. And frankly, I was quite surprised that a guy who's coming off an injury issue was still playing in and around the 80th minute, because I thought in and around the hour mark and just after, he started to look leggy. His passes weren't as crisp. He wasn't getting in on tackles very much. And hindsight is 2020. But if Boubacar Kamara comes into that game in the 75th minute or shortly thereafter, Aston Villa's in round 4 of the FA Cup. However, I don't care how tired you are physically or mentally, you have got to be switched on with 2 minutes left in the 90. And Leander Dendoncker just flat out has a brain fart here. Or he didn't get a shout. If this ball goes back to Robin Olsen, we're in the 4th round of the FA Cup. I'm not so crazy about the ball being even played there. Maybe Olsen should have gone wide with it. Either way, Aston Villa was not prepared for the press at this stage of the game. And the number 1 big issue or moment that defined Villa 1 Stevenage 2, set piece switch off. So once again, 2 goals conceded from set pieces, technically, a penalty and then a short corner routine. And if you tally that up on top of all the league games, that's -10 on the season. And we're halfway through. That's awful, frankly, which means we're also not scoring enough from set pieces. But bottom line, you've conceded a penalty. It's now 1-1 and you're down to 10 men. You absolutely, positively must take the mindset that at the very minimum, you're going to a replay. Not the greatest circumstance because the fixture pileup is a thing, but that's how you have to approach it from that moment on, down to 10 men. No, we switched off. Ollie Watkins is responsible for the short corner, I'm assuming, because he's the closest one to it. But look at how long it takes for him to close this down. This has nothing to do with Austin McPhee, by the way. This is a group of Aston Villa players who are still mentally processing the fact that they're in a 1-1 game, down to 10 men, with a League 2 side, and facing a replay. That's what's happening. They have all gone on the wobble. It takes Watkins an age to realize what's happening and to close down. And quite frankly, Robin Olsen will never want to see this goal again because he has to do better on this goal. It's one of those moments in your life of fandom of a football club that makes you hate football and this competition specifically. That's how soul-crushing this moment was. And take nothing away from Stevenage. They absolutely deserved it. Now, back to the debates that divide this fan base. Ones where you go, well, I could actually see that side of it, and I could see that side of it. One of the biggest, and it's come up this week, and it's fair, is this squad good enough? Have they overachieved recently, or have they been underachieving all along because of poor management? I'm here to tell you we've got the answer. The squad is not good enough, full stop, and I've said it before. Unai Emery's a great manager. He can take them maybe this far. He's exposed them to some new ideas, and I think he's got the most out of them in the league. But there is always going to be a limit with this squad, and one of them is when you come into a cup competition and you are forced to rotate. We have the evidence, and that's why I keep saying we need a transformational type player that can come into this squad and start in that first team right away and be expected to be consistent week after week. When's the last time we've had a player like that? After Jack Grealish, of course. Was it Christian Benteke? Is that the last impact type player that came in out of nowhere and just took the team, did things by himself that were spectacular, or distracted enough people because of his size and stature that it created opportunities for other people like Andreas Weimann? Now, we're not getting that kind of player in this window, I don't believe, maybe this summer. But the question also has to be asked, given the state of this squad and the money spent. Should Johan Lange be allowed to have another transfer window? Alex Moreno is obviously an Unai Emery target. There's no way that Johan Lange or the recruitment department would have had this guy on any of their lists before Emery came to Villa, and I think that's what we're going to do in this window. Find specialists. Emery said it himself. players with characteristics that are totally specific and unique, which will give him tactical flexibility, but also competition, and will just change the dynamic a little bit. I like this player a lot. He's been one of the standout performers in La Liga. Some were surprised he wasn't on the Spanish team that went to the World Cup. He's turning 30 in June, with some people are actually saying is old. It's not old anymore. He's in his prime. But what I love about him is that he is urgent in getting forward and taking people on and getting into areas of the field that we as Aston Villa, I don't think get into enough. When did Aston Villa ever take on a fullback, even in the Stevenage game? Maybe draw a foul or a penalty, get into the box by the byline, hook it back, create chaos. That's what this player likes to do. Way more winger than fullback. And if we bring in a couple of those ingredient players in this window, and then maybe go after some bumper big names in the summer, I'm okay with that. But Emery's the guy who's got to decide from here on in. Here's a couple of quick examples of situations and circumstances that Alex Moreno seems to get into an awful lot, just based on watching some of his games and his highlight reels. And most importantly, it's the one about driving the byline and hooking it back into the danger area. How often do we score those kinds of goals? Not very. And then there's this kind, the driven cross into the danger area. Do you see Matt Cash and Luca Dean providing that kind of service? Not enough, in my opinion. And by the way, please don't turn your nose up at a player coming from La Liga playing for a Real Betis under Manuel Pellegrini, who's got the most out of this player. And this, we talk about being a massive club. This is a big club. Estadio Benito Villamarin, 61,000 people. I watched a series called Six Dreams, which followed 6 individuals in La Liga, and one of them was Andres Guardado of Mexico's men's national team. I'm telling you, there's just a different vibe in Spain. When this stadium is full and Betis scores, it's like a whoosh. Totally different than England. Fascinating stuff. This is a big, proper club. He will be ready to play for Aston Villa. Now, with the Moreno rumors and Diego Carlos's return imminent, we're talking about weeks here. I was wondering, is Unai Emery toying with the idea of playing with 3 at the back? I've wondered about this for an awful long time, because Carlos, Mings, and Konza, that's not bad. 2 lefties out of 3, which is also kind of rare. But guys that are getting better at playing with the ball at their feet. Diego Carlos, that's one of the reasons why they brought him in. Mings has been much better at it recently. Konza's the young one, but he has the pace in the group. That's not a bad complement of 3. Having 3 at the back also does afford you the luxury, though, of having 2 very aggressive, attack-minded wingbacks. And between Moreno and Cash, well, those characteristics suit those players. And maybe they're the ones who are going to be asked to go and supply the width and combine with the striker and maybe some of the other more advanced players. But the other thing to keep in mind is we also have this luxury of a very well-defined number 6 in Boubacar Kamara. I've said it before. We've got to build a team around this guy and the fact that he's a specialist in this position. That's 6 players right there, but that's pretty solid in behind the ball as far as I'm concerned. Then you have your number 8, or maybe this is a number 10, and then this is the number 8 or 10, vice versa, however you want to orient it, playing behind a defined number 9. And we know that Unai Emery is seeking one of those half-winger forwards that plays in the inside channels, maybe left or right, and can roam left or right. And maybe he's the type of player that combines with the fullbacks. The other thing about this is you could see how easily this drops into 4-4-2. Because Kamara can drop into that back 4, and now you have that 4-4-2 out of possession. This is not new stuff. I just feel like with the personnel and with Carlos coming back, is this the way we're going to go? It's impossible to find any positives from that performance and result on Sunday. This is as gloomy as I have felt in such a long time, juxtaposed with the joy of New Year's Day. That's what's so frustrating about Aston Villa. We go through this year after year and we don't seem to learn from it. But if there is a collateral outcome from being humiliated at home and losing the way we did, it is that I think we are going to have a bounce back performance against Leeds. A lot of fans are saying the opposite. This is the beginning of the death spiral. I do not agree. We haven't lost to Leeds since the Patrick Bamford hat trick at home when the lockout season was occurring. Leeds are in a run of 6 without a victory, all competitions. They have a game at home, a replay against Cardiff the following Tuesday. And they're going to have to make some hay because they also have Brentford at home after Villa. Then they're away at Nottingham Forest. 5 points behind us, 2 points from safety. And I've told you this before. I rate Jesse Marsch as a human and as a coach and a technical leader. But he needs to make some hay right now. Otherwise, I think the pressure is really going to mount. And Leeds is another one of those teams that is really hard to predict from week to week. I just have this sneaking sensation that the boss will have not been happy and that there will be a response on Friday night. The last thing I'm going to rant about here in this show is that the record at Villa Park is going to have to improve at some point. And this is another issue that has perfectly divided the fan base. Villa Park is like a library. It's so quiet. The players are responsible for igniting the fans sometimes. I could see both sides to that argument. Bottom line, though, is the only way that you string together consistently good performances at home is with better, more dynamic, higher quality players. Why add another 7,000 plus seats just to send another 7,000 or so people home unhappy? This has been a problem for a long time, and my fear is it's too easy for the opposing teams to come to Villa Park right now. The only way you change it is with quality in that lineup, and maybe in our lifetimes, we string together not just 1 or 2 or 3, but 4 or 5 great results at home. Because after Liverpool, Wolves, and now Stevenage, it's not been good enough. Until the Leeds game and the Leeds show, try to stay positive, be hopeful for the future, and as always, up the mighty Villa.